Welcome to the Communications Podcast. In this show, communications expert Janet Chihocky explores digital, virtual, physical, and cyber communications topics while showcasing other leaders in the field of business, communications, and technology. Here's your host, Janet Chihocky.
Hey, this is Janet, and I'm so glad you're back for another podcast, the Communications Podcast. And so I want to tell you a story. Some years back, I was asked to teach a communications course, an all-day communications course, to various Air Force and Army, either colonel level or civilians that were equivalent to like a lieutenant colonel or a colonel. I was really excited about this. I was asked to go down to UNC, so the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and I'll never forget the first time I was getting prepared to teach this class. I'm like, this is really amazing. Never in my career did I think I would have this opportunity. And so as I was pulling all of my content together, because the military is really crazy organized, and I wanted to be organized with my thoughts and with my information and have my slide deck, my presentation, just exactly the way it needed to be. And so as I was, kind of placing out everything and putting my content together, I start to see a pattern. I'm like, hey, I think I've got something here. Because it dawned on me as I looked at my information, I had three distinct groups of content: strategy, structure, and story. And I thought, you know what? Those are the three S's required for growth: personal growth, financial growth, emotional growth, professional growth, bottom line growth. You got to have a strategy. You got to have a structure, and you got to have a story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little series with you guys for the next few podcasts, and I'm going to take every one of these topics, and I'm just going to spend a few hot minutes in talking about each one so you can say, hey, this is how I can apply this in my personal life. This is how I can apply this in my business. If you're a business owner or if you're a manager, you can apply it for your department. But I want to focus on the three, what I call, Janet has trademarked, the three S's required for growth. That would be strategy, structure, and story. So let's talk for a few minutes today about strategy. There is so many times with our strategy, it seems like a heavy word. It seems like a word that warrants a big, lofty document. Folks, you have no idea how many times I have walked into an organization and they give me a copy of their strategy. One of the first questions I ask is like, so who's aware of this? Or where are we in the strategy? Oh, no, we just had it written. I mean, it just sits on the shelf. Oh, that's so painful, because when you do that, and sometimes that's a waste of time and effort, the strategy's got to be something that you're going to refer back to. I think we get caught up in thinking it's got to be this lofty 30-page document or this 10-page document. I met a business owner years and years and years ago. He was an immigrant from India. He came to this country and had done very well. And he owned several companies. And after I heard him speak, I went up and started chatting with him. And I said, so your strategy, how much time? And he stopped me right there. He said, my strategies across my companies are no more than one page. No more than one page. Because if you spend all your time in strategy, you're not executing. And by the time you finish your strategy, the market's already changed. If you focus on some big lofty document. I'm like, oh, that's really good advice. So then I have gotten caught up in times in writing a strategy document perhaps longer than it needed to be. And now my strategy documents are like a page and a half long. Here's my vision. Here's my mission. Here's my goals. Here's how we're going to get there. And here's what we're going to measure performance by. So when we think about strategy, it really is a deliberate, managed process in your thinking. Like, I'm going to have a strategy. And maybe my strategy is I want to get out of debt. Of course, that was my problem, years ago. If you've read my book, Chapter 11, Facing It, I did too, which is a great book, and you can get it on Amazon. Or actually, most of you know, I give out a free copy. So if you go to my Janson website, JANSONCOM.com, jansoncom.com, that's the name of my company. If you go there, you can surf around and you can click here to receive a free copy of Janet's book. And it's about when I was on the verge of losing everything, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And I won't go into the whole story now because that's not the point of this podcast. But I had to have a strategy. My strategy was, I'm not filing for Chapter 11. I'm not filing for bankruptcy. Okay, I didn't have time for a lofty document. All I needed to know is that I needed to get out of this mess. And I had to have a strategy. And what a strategy does, folks, is it focuses your steps. Okay, so even if you think about in your personal life, I want to have a strategy for buying a new home. I want to have a strategy for paying off my car. I'm thinking about right now, I'm getting ready to refinance my house from a 30-year mortgage to a 15-year mortgage. And then I want to try to pay it down before, faster than 15 years. I have to have a strategy for that. I have to make adjustments. It's got to be a deliberate process, and it's going to give me focus. So if paying my house off, let's say in 7 years, is the strategy, well, then I've got to have a structured process for how I'm going to do that. So that's just an example. All right, so if you think about if you're a business owner, and let's just say you're a small business owner, because I have a special place in my heart for small business owners, because I'm one too. We have a strategy. We want to start a business, or maybe you've already had your business and you want to open up another service line. One of the first things you have to do is, do I understand, how well do I know the customer? Do I really know the customer? Here's something I see all the time. People think they know the customer, but they really don't know the customer. You've got to know the customer. You got to know what's keeping them up at night. You have to know, what do they want? What do they need? What are they really looking for? I don't care if you're selling tropical smoothie, or if you're selling engineering, or if you're selling a product for the military, or you're selling, hot, great Italian food. What does your market want? I have to then look at my competitors and say, what are they doing well? What are they doing poorly? What could we offer that's going to be different from them? Or am I going to be just like everybody else? But I have to have a strategy for what I'm going to do. Okay, so I have to have a strategy for this business. Again, I want to take things to a personal level, because I think a lot of times people are like, I don't own a business, Janet. I'm not running a massive department. I just need to understand how I can have a strategy for my day-to-day living. And the strategy is, it's a deliberate process. Right? In a deliberate process, when you have a deliberate process, it gives you focus. And sometimes focusing yourself and focusing your mind. Most of you, some of you may or may not know, I'm a woman of faith. I believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross for my sins. And at the age of 14, I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior. And the other day I was having my devotions. And one of the things the devotion said was, Lord, teach me how to pry my mind away from things that distract me. And the interesting word was pry, because it's not like, just help me to kind of keep my thoughts straight. It's like, it takes work to focus. It's a deliberate effort to really focus on what I want to accomplish. A lot of young people have a strategy for their education, their careers. Hey, how am I going to navigate all this? And so when you understand the goal with strategy is, don't let that word burden you. If you want to grow, you have to have a strategy. I can tell you that. I want to say, if you want to grow well, okay? I mean, everybody can just, I'm doing the same thing I was 25 years ago. I heard a preacher say one time, the 7 words of death are, we've always done it this way before. Well, you can take out we and say, I've always done it this way before. Well, if you're not growing, you're dying. And if you want to grow, you got to have a strategy. And maybe that strategy is, I want to get accepted into this school. I want to apply for this particular job. I want to go into this particular market. I want to start a business. I want to transition out of management and go start my own company. I want to pay off my house. I want to do the following things. I want to buy a home. Whatever. It's a process that gives you focus. So let me tell you something from a business standpoint. I have seen people interview for jobs that are like, I'll just do whatever you need me to do. And on one hand, that sounds great. On one hand, that sounds like an all-in person. I'll do what it takes to help the bottom line. But there's no focus to the conversation. There's no focus to what they want to do. So where do you think you can really help the company? Just whatever you need done. That's too open. That's too vague. Hey, my gift is really, and I'm just going to make this up, my gift is really in digital media strategies, or my gift really is in house cleaning, or my gift is really in caregiving, or my gift is really in go on from there program management, or senior analyst type of work. You got to have a focus. And when you give the focus, then you start to have a strategy, and within the strategy, I can begin to grow. And so the point I really want to get across to you is how important it is to have focus to what you're going to do. When I started Janssen years ago, I didn't want Janssen to be this company that was all things to all people. I cannot tell you how many government contracting companies are all things to all people. Oh, we can do this, and we can do this, and we can do this, and we can do that. That's great for them. I don't think it works. And I don't think it works because if you try to be everything, you're not going to be quite good at anything. And so I've always kept Janssen focused on various forms of communication, strategic communications, public affairs, facilities, branding, workspace environments. Now we're on to this virtual environments, virtual engagements, speeches, articles, video production, everything that involves communication. I've always kept the company focused on that. And so when I wanted to break into the military market, I had to understand the military. When I didn't come from the military, I've never served a hot second in uniform. So I needed to understand the customer. So one of the things I did is I hired a consultant. I hired a gentleman who had just come out of the Army, and he had been out for some time. He was a colonel when he had served, and then he went out and worked at a big defense company for a number of years. And then he was like, okay, I'm going to put up a shingle and I'm going to do some consulting for a few companies. And Mark was amazing. He really helped me understand how the Army buys, how the military does this, how they think about, small business and how to be successful as a small business, and how to develop the relationships in their world and how to understand their vernacular. I had to understand a whole nother entity that I wasn't exposed to in my career. So I had to really understand the customer. And then I had to understand my competitors. What were my competitors doing? What were they doing better than I was doing? What could I do better than them? I had to really understand, as I like to call it, my sandbox. And that has a lot to do with what sort of capabilities that I offer that's going to be attractive to them. And so a strategy is saying, this is where I want to go. And I'm going to give myself focus. Now, here's the most important thing. You have to have reality with your strategy. This is like 20 some years ago. I was sitting in the conference room with a company, and the CEO was talking, and they were a small company. They were like, I don't know, maybe $20 or $30 million company. And the CEO is sitting there saying, one day we're going to be as big as Lockheed Martin and we're going to take over them. And I don't know, after I'd kind of spent the day there and walked around and saw the operation, and I'm not saying they weren't doing a great job, but that wasn't going to be a realistic goal. I mean, Lockheed Martin, years ago they were Lockheed, and years ago they were Martin Marietta, and then they joined together and it's Lockheed Martin. But they're this massive company, like hundreds of thousands of people. And they've been big for a really, 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 really long time. And I admired his passion. And he believed it. He's like, we are going to be as big as Lockheed Martin. And I admired his visioning, but there was no strategy for how they were going to get there. It's like, you can have a great idea, but how are you going to get there? And that's what a strategy does for you. You can have a brilliant idea, but the strategy gives you focus and structure, which we're going to talk about the next time. The strategy gives you focus in your thinking, in your approach, how you go about it. It gives you focus in terms of your efforts, where you should spend money, where you should spend time. It's all about gathering the information. And, the information was gathered and we're like, this guy is not going to become the next Lockheed Martin. And it's very hard to work with individuals who cannot bring down their great ideas into reality and say, this is not going to happen. What you can do is you can be very successful doing this, but I'm not quite sure you're going to be very successful doing that. I've seen people come into organizations, both mine as well as others, and they've come in from big companies. They come in from large infrastructure experiences. Here they come to our small business. We do less than about $7 million a year right now, and they're coming in and they're bringing some great ideas, but they're not going to work within our strategy. Our strategy is based on being a small business. We're very agile. We're very flexible. We're quick. We're quick on our feet. We're like all in, right? And a lot of times people have challenges with that because they're trying to put a strategy into an environment that doesn't fit. Because why? It's a different type of focus. We have a different way of doing things than larger companies do or larger organizations. And I'm going to talk more about things as we go on in the other podcasts, but you have to have a strategy. And I'm going to end with this. If you remember nothing else from this podcast, I want you to remember this. Where there is no vision, anything will do. I'm going to say it again. Where there is no vision, anything will go, or any road will do. In other words, if I don't know where I want to go, if I don't know who I want to become, if I don't have some aspirations of, like I said, starting a business, buying a home, paying off your house, where there is no vision, any road will do. The more focus you bring into your environments, emotionally, personally, professionally, financially, whatever it may be, the more focused your approach, the more relevant things will become. You won't spend your money doing cavalier type of things if your goal is, I'm trying to save up and buy a car. When I was trying to pay Jansen's bills off, when we were, nearly $500,000 in debt, I couldn't take a salary for the longest time. I couldn't go to the store anymore. I couldn't go to Ann Taylor and just buy what I wanted. I had to kind of stop. I had to change a lot of behaviors. I had to stop all of that stuff. I went to the grocery store one time and gave myself a budget of $5. $5! That bought me some peanut butter and some bread, and I think something else. But I had to make a lot of changes because what was my strategy? I got to pay off these debts. I've got to pay off these debts. So I had to make behavioral changes in support of that strategy so I could execute that strategy. Because my focus was, I'm not closing the doors. I'm going to work my tail off. And it took a long time. But we did it. And I'm so honored and blessed and give the Lord all the glory that Jansen has been for a very long time completely debt-free. And while a lot of other organizations had to apply for PPP loans, we did not. And I will say this is my position on the PPP loans. If you don't need it, don't apply for it. There are entities that truly, truly, truly need those loans and need that support. And of course, I'm a big fan of paying your loans back, but if you don't need it, don't apply for it. We didn't need it. We didn't apply for it. I don't believe in taking something just because it's free. So strategy, you got to have focus. And I'm going to go to this statement one more time. Where there's no vision, any road will do. Put a vision out there for your finances. Put a vision out there for your career. Put a vision out there for your personal goals. Put a vision out there, a realistic vision, for your business. Otherwise, anything will go. Anything will take. And what you want is focus. That is the key element of strategy. Where there is no vision, any road will do. So this is the first one. In terms of the 3 S's required for growth, my next one's going to focus on structure. And then the third one will focus on story. I hope you've enjoyed this today. You guys have a fantastic day and week, and I will chat with you soon.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Communications Podcast. This show is sponsored by Jansen, which specializes in digital, virtual, physical, and cyber communications. Learn more about Jansen by visiting www.jansencom.com.